So hello, um, my name is Jakub Nowak. I'm on the behalf of SmokeD. I will be hosting today's webinar. With me is Floyd and Arthur. We'll start with the quick presentation about SmokeD, only a few words from Arthur. Then we'll move on to the Floyd's presentation about whole SRP project. Then we'll take a quick survey. We'll be very glad to get your answers. In the meantime, of course, during the presentation, you can ask question for our Q&A session. We'll take the Q&A session after the survey, and the question will be displayed on screen, so Floyd can read the question and can answer for you. So thank you. Enjoy the webinar, and Arthur, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Jacob, for the short introduction. As Jacob said, my name is Artur Matuszczak. I'm the founder and CEO for the SmokeD company. And as you can imagine, and we are the type of the company of one product company. We've been working on a wildfire detection solution, and it looks like we achieved quite good goals. When we launched the company 5 years ago in 2020 in Warsaw, Poland, now we have a company in Austin, Texas. There is our office and a couple of people work on American market. And our customers are mainly from forests, national parks, sometimes local governments, and even homeowners can be our customers because we have a couple of installations in California for local communities. And yeah, this is what we do for our customers. And the system, as you know, we have one goal: detect first symptoms of wildfires like smoke or flames, and then send information. We have to send information to local communities or fire managers or fire teams that we inform everybody that wants to be informed about the danger. So that's our goal. When we launched the company 5 years ago, there was a time when we already working on on the system in different company, in previous company, but now we monitor 15 million acres worldwide. We are present in 7 countries, not only in Poland when we launched the company. In Europe, there is like countries like Poland, like Italy, like Spain, France, and North Macedonia, but of course different from different parts of world as well, like Australia, Indonesia, and of course United States. We are present in the US, in Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and California. So this is where we are now. As you can see, the system works 24/7, and this is this slide shows where we are present, but at the same time, it means we have a full team here in Poland as our back office that can manage and supervise all this installation worldwide, because we have one dispatch center and people can see all alerts, which are automatically, of course, generated, but everybody is informed, and our team as well, so they keep an eye on the system. We have to detect very fast, and the system has to be reliable, so we can't make too many false positive alerts. So it's not easy to detect fire. It's not easy to not make mistakes, like because smoke, sometimes just a cloud, sometimes even a shadow from the cloud can be recognized like a smoke. So the system has to be as wise as possible. So this is AI and algorithms and all detectors, all cameras that send information and send frames and pictures from the devices to external server, where we have a heart of the system, which is AI and algorithms. So at that place, there's a place where we make image analysis. So once we detect something, and then we use the second version of detection as a verification, because the full professional system can utilize PTZ cameras or just simplest version like a detector. It cooperates together, and one unit can detect and the second can verify alert. So the final information, like as an alert, goes to decision makers on their phones or computers, to dispatch centers, to fire teams, to everybody in many different ways about the danger. And the time, of course, time is crucial because we can't wait 10, 15, 20 minutes for the alert. It has to be as soon as possible because it doesn't make sense to detect fire if everybody knows that that fact. So yeah, this is where we are with the system and our achievements. And it's worth to mention our mobile app because we are the only company that treat people like a customers. We don't have to think about decision makers from foresters or national parks like the only customers, because we have the mobile app and everybody can download the app from Google Store or App Store, install you can install on your phone, and then you can mark the area where you might be interested in getting alerts from this system. So that's it. You can see the couple of screens how the app looks like on your phone. So yeah, but please be careful with using the app because it might wake up you in the night, because it's the alert is pretty loud. So but that's the goal, to inform even if it's the middle of the night. This is all from me. Thank you again for being here, and now Floyd.
Yeah, but thank you, Arthur. But before we can let you go, there is one question. I guess it's free, because it appeared in meantime of your presentation. So
Reminder to place the detection devices where when we have our customers, then we have to decide based on image, no, I would say even GIS analysis. So we are looking for the best places before we install our hardware and some additional stuff. Then we decide on GIS analysis because we need to have long range view. So detector camera, if it's the longer view, the better. So that's the key. Sometimes it's enough to have, let's say, one canyon 1 mile away from the camera, and this is enough. The system will detect everything on this distance. But if you have let's say a forest or park or big local community, then you can install on the top of the hill on some structure, building, chimney or tower, and secure the monitoring for the 15 miles from that place. So yeah, first we do a GIS analysis and then we install hardware.
okay, perfect. Thank you, Arthur. Now I think we can move on to the Floyd's presentation. So Floyd, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Okay, you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, good morning and good afternoon or evening if across the pond there. Um, Wanted to say thanks and much appreciated for being asked to share a little bit about Salt River Project here in Arizona in the United States, and some of the stuff that we've done with SmokeD. So I'll kind of go through here a little bit about Salt River Project. So SRP is, let's get it there. Well, first thing I want to do is when we have meetings, we usually start with a safety minute. So I forgot I had this slide in here. Currently here in Arizona, where we're at, it's going to be about 107 Fahrenheit. It was up to like 114, 115 a week or so ago, which gets to be kind of typical this time of year. So just a reminder, about drinking plenty of water and, sunscreen, appropriate hats. People get out in the morning, still hike and stuff, but there is a number of fatalities that people come and visit that are just not used to the kind of heat that we have here. So we always remind people just hydrate and be prepared. Always have extra water. So just a little safety minute for this, since we're talking about fire and things like that. So SRP, we're both a water and a power utility. We're a not-for-profit utility here in the United States. We're the third largest public power in the U.S., and we're the largest electric provider here in the greater Phoenix metropolitan area, as you can see. Our mission is always, is combining energy for reliable, affordable, sustainable future. We're definitely stewards of the watershed. As you can see, we have that's another part of our company. It's about 2.5 million, and it's still growing because it's a pretty fast growing area currently here in this area for serving water, even outside of our electric service territory. So just a little bit about us. There's a little bit of the service territory that we have. This would be the Phoenix metropolitan area. You got a number of cities that make this up, but a little bit of our hydro footprint. Some of the line links that we have that's here. There's a couple other utilities here in Arizona that have some pretty significant footprint, but everything you're seeing here is the infrastructure that we have that we're working with. We do 500 kV electric all the way down to distribution to the customer's house. We have generation on hydroelectric, we have coal, we have part of the nuclear. The largest nuclear plant in the U.S. is the Palo Verde here, which we're co-owners with a number of other utilities. So got a diverse footprint portfolio. Some of the areas that we have, like we said, we're in the metropolitan area, but we also are in the high country. So this area here is two circuits of 500 kV. One is ours, and one is our neighboring utility, Arizona Public Service. And this is not uncommon to have major corridors because of the amount of right-of-way you need to have things partnered together. So this elevation is about 7,500 foot in elevation in the northern part of Arizona. And these are connecting some pretty significant power plants and delivering down to the valley area, and then even farther south into southern Arizona for some other utility connections. So this corridor is worked on and maintained every 5 years for clearing vegetation, but this same area sees fires routinely, and it's going to be one of the areas that we show where we did our R&D and first SmokeD sites. We also have more of the desert and the brush type vegetation footprint. So this is a little bit farther south. Again, it's 500 kV system, 230 kV system. So these are major paths, and the area that we're working on here has seen pretty significant fires in the Sonoran Desert footprint, which is not as adaptive to fire. And so when there is fires here, they're always trying to extinguish them. We have one of the largest saguaro population of the cacti in this region, which is another thing they try to protect. So you don't, when you get fires, they'll have a pretty significant opportunity to burn through some of the invasive species and grasses, things of that nature, because that's kind of the thing we're seeing that's starting to really take over the landscape. There's been probably 500,000 acres in just a few fires, that were noted here in the last couple years in this region. And a lot of it is tying back to these grasses that are growing. We also have, the valley, so we have infrastructure that's more in your urban, so we have these kind of footprints and things that we need to deal with, and vegetation. So we have a variety. So one thing we do is we track fires that are an acre or greater in their size. And this is a little bit distorted on this map, trying to make it fit in a PowerPoint, but every one of these little red dots are fires. And either the bigger the fire, the red here, it'll be a larger complex fire, but there is a lot of fires. So on this map, there was 930 fires that we had put in here across the state of Arizona. We don't get as much up here on the reservation, and same with like military reservations because public is not around. But the important part of this is to see that every one of these lines, these are not roads, these are actually power lines of 100 kV and higher. So you can see the exposure of the grid or electric infrastructure in Arizona is definitely subject to having fire impacts as we cruise around the state. And these are lines for, all the utility owners that's on this footprint. So definitely, and this just isn't for 1 year. We had 1.1 million acres back in 2020 during COVID, and the forests were all closed, but there were just a lot of fires that year. So we've been tracking those to show the impacts and what you could have. So it got a few pictures that's showing some of the fires, same 2 500 kV corridors. So pretty large fire that came through here that had significant outages, no damage. But the thing is when you have these offline in the middle of the summer, when your loads are the highest, it definitely has major impact from serving customers for more than our utility, but just in this region. This was another fire. This is a telegraph fire. So this was one that was more in that lower in the desert and the brush area. So this was just this lone fire here was 195,000 acres. This was back in 21. Another one that get down in the desert, it's like not real big, but these 2 power lines here that are together are pretty significant. They come out of the nuclear plant. And so having these impacted become very significant in your operations of your power plants. And so not all fires have to happen up in heavy vegetated areas or in the high country. We can get these down here in the urban area. So just a few samples, some of the things we have. One of the tools that we do get is the daily forecast. We get it twice a day. This comes from the U.S. Forest Service in the region that we have the most facilities covering. And so what you have here is the 3 vegetation classes with the Sonoran Desert, the brush area, or your timbered woodland. And we're tracking, the burn index values, your energy release component values, which is what's combined to trigger and reflect on your fire danger rating, your signage that you see. So as you can tell here in June 20th, we were in extreme on these 2 categories of Sonoran and brush. And even in the high country, it's at very high. So almost the max across the board, which is pretty typical in the summers here. We've had more of a drought. Again, we had a little bit of snow in the spring, but very minimal in the winter. So the fuels are already dried out. All of this is leading to having more exposure for fire. So part of our mitigation strategies in our current is, our goal is we want to prevent our facilities. We don't want to be that guy for causing fires. We also want to be able to protect our facilities from fires and be able to have a pretty good resiliency in not just reliability, but the resiliency. And there's an example of one of the structures that we had burned through, and it's standing on one leg, and this structure is still in service. And this was part of a woodberry fire, and this fire was like 125,000 acres. Again, more in this desert floor area. Our taxis, we do have a full veg management group. We have asset management, inspections, testing. We're doing system hardening and pretty fire-prone areas we're looking at as we change structures, going from wood to steel. We have an incident command ICS that we use, and we do training on that, so we'll stand that up for events. Reclosing, we do strategize taking reclosers in and out of service and higher threat times, as well as higher fire threat areas. SRP is also engaged with other utilities, third parties, for mitigation strategies and practices and programs. And that kind of gets us into, you know, the fire detectors, cameras, weather stations, situational, this should have been situational awareness and monitoring. Those are all the things that we're starting to focus on more and add more to our portfolio. So it brings us into the SmokeD. So meeting with Arthur and his team, it was early on back in 2020, and we talked with them about doing a pilot project, and we had some R&D that we were working on. So we selected an area, which is here in the green, and this is that same 500 kV corridor that we had that had dual circuits in there. And you can see in this lower area, this was the Valley Metro area, and this is in the region where it would be. So we did some analysis with our GIS group, and we shared files to Arthur and his team to look at what would be the viewscape, what would be the best locations that we could demonstrate how the SmokeD system would work. And we kind of pushed it to the limits that we were thinking as far as challenges for the system. We put it in an area where it had very limited communication. It had no distribution power for powering up any of the equipment. So the system all had to be on solar. It's on public cellular currently. And we didn't want to have to go get permits or anything. So we actually installed this equipment on our 500 kV energized towers. So another thing that had not been done before anywhere. And so we kind of pushed the limits, worked with our engineering group, came up with what it would take to add more facilities for structural loading to our equipment, as well as maintain and preserve all the structural analysis as it was engineered. So it took quite a while for our team, a lot longer for us than it took for Archer's team and SmokeD to put the package together. But this is what we ended up with. So SmokeD provided some construction management and oversight and assistance. So this is a couple of their representatives here that were extremely helpful. And we kind of learned as we went along with them. You know, challenges as initially, you know, they're in Europe and we're here in the States, and talking through what we needed to do. So in a week with our crews, we were able to build the sites that we needed to build on the first phase. Next picture shows some of our line crews putting together and climbing the towers, mounting the facilities that we had to add additional steel to these structures, and then started mounting the equipment. Again, we had no idea, because for this type of system, it had never been mounted on a utility structure. So we didn't have a site that we could have went to or visit or get information on. We kind of had to lay this out ourselves in coordination with SmokeD. So back and forth. Crews are still continuing on hanging. This is some of the additional steel we added. Everything faces to the south. We have a full site, so we'll have 4 detectors around this tower. We had 3 solar panels, 2 big cabinets for batteries and electronics, the router. So continuing on, this is what it looked like when it was done, cleaned up. This was the operational view looking at it. Didn't really have any hiccups installing. We had to be careful with the solar panels. Our guys are used to building big things and, you know, kind of manhandling some of the stuff, and we just had to be real careful installing some of these electronics or like the solar panels. We did break one. We had one break hauling it in to the location. So we learned to make sure to save the packaging, and when it's shipped a certain way, to haul it up there that way to preserve it. But this is what we ended up with. So it was very soon after the site was built, we knew there was going to be some prescribed burning taking place. And the site picked that up as it learned the environment. We were getting alerts on that. So we were pretty hopeful on the way the system would work as it was explained to us. And we were seeing the actual real-time product happening. So this system has been in service for 2 full years, and I just took some screenshots of some of the actual alerts. And there's been a number of fires that these different detectors have alerted for and provided information on, as we've shared. And as Archer said earlier, we set this up so that the agencies that are in this region were part of the package of people that were going to receive of alerts simultaneously. So the U.S. Forest Service, some of our state lands and fire personnel, also local fire departments. So they're all receiving this at the same time. So this would be the map view of that particular fire overlaid on top of our corridor, major highway that comes through here. So pretty accurate. And the elevation that we have this on, as you can see, is not significantly high off the ground. And so if we were to maximize this system, you could even have greater accuracy and longer distances through this particular system. I think we were getting things, we had some fires that we were picking smoke up that were pushing the 10-mile range pretty easy, but it just had to depend on, you know, the view it had. Because again, we don't have these sitting on mountaintops. We were doing a demonstration area, so we wanted to make sure it was easy enough to get different people in to see the system, to show off what we were trying to do a lot of testing. But as we deploy these, we would definitely maximize the capabilities by where we would mount them and how we would utilize them. Put this one here to show, as Archer said, these work at night. So this was a fire that was picked up, and we know where this fire is, and it was validated, but it gets the same alerts at night. And this was the location of that fire sitting there, the same thing. It was pretty accurate to where that was a known fire that was in the area. The next thing we did is spoke with SmokeD, and we realized that as we were utilizing these tools, you know, we had things like PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff. You know, things were happening in other states, in Hawaii, California, and you know, the big thing was weather. You know, really having more weather information and inputs at your locations. I am the fire management officer for our company, and so do responses on incidents. And that's one thing is on fires, when especially you get bigger, they create their own weather, and it's very important for the tactics. So we approached SmokeD about the capabilities. If we already have power to a site, we already have communications at a site, what's the chances of getting some weather? And so they were pretty quick to be able to come back with a package that we demonstrated, which is this system that's up here that's right above the detector that was able to give us wind speed, direction, temperature, humidity, as well as we were able to put a ground sensor in for moisture. So we ran a cable and a probe down to the tower. So we were able to add this stuff to the existing sites and take advantage of that. So this system was put in last summer, so like a year ago, that we were able to add the weather station components to that system. And they worked on the dashboard so that when we look at the information about an incident, you can click on weather and it's going to give you the local weather from this site at this detector versus from some other facility that could be a decent distance away. So what we've done with that, now that we have weather and we have the situational awareness, we've developed this screen here because we do have our own meteorologists, and we've been expanding that group. We've been adding just specific weather stations in certain areas. We also, like we said, we have the SmokeD capabilities. So this is a one-pager that we issue out on Mondays and Thursdays that does the forecasting of the weather, any red flag warnings, the wind, any proposed lightning from storms, a map of where we've taken these two weather stations and set them. They were in areas that we had for potential PSPS. We've added our criteria. And so we're starting to do more and more of using the tools that are now becoming available and tailoring those to what would work best for our operations and for our personnel, both in the field, but also in dispatch centers, as we strategically utilize some of the things that are becoming more and more available. We also are doing a number of asset management and hardening, like we said, from the wood pole replacement programs, clearances that we've been doing, a lot of the NERC work, and using LiDAR to confirm all of our electrical clearances, increased inspections and testing, non-expulsion fuses on the distribution system. As you can see, pole wraps here, so clear around the pole, so any wood structures that have any kind of spark emitting potential, we're clearing around that for fire starts, but then we're also wrapping the poles with intumescent fire mesh wrap, so that if a fire did come through here, you should be able to survive and not lose the structure. You may have smoke, impacts, but you would not lose your structure. So just a few of those things that we're doing. Definitely adding more cameras and more smoke detection, as well as weather stations. We're also doing fire threat modeling. So we've started down that path. We're in our second year, working with some consultants who are going and doing true fire threat modeling of the areas to help us determine what are our highest risk circuits. And even though that as far as our history, we haven't had issues of starting fires, the idea is that there's so much visibility nowadays in this arena that we needed to make sure we had other tools that are looking at this and doing some modeling besides just what we've been doing over the years. And so this has been beneficial. We've started strategically targeting areas that we want to do those additional weather stations or additional smoke detecting and cameras. A little bit about the public safety power shutoff. All of this is part of the driving factor. So we are got a full fire mitigation plan. We do have a public safety power shutoff program as well. And our goal is to continue to find ways to reduce the potential for impacts, and to try to reduce the amount of customer bases that could be impacted, so that ultimately we hope to never actually exercise a power safety shutoff, but we do need to have the program. So as you can see, weather conditions, forecasting, monitoring, those are like huge things in the development of a PSPS. So it still circles right back to not just our asset health, but our ability to have some vision with cameras, detectors, and SmokeD. So that was the last slide I had. My contact info. People have any questions, and I think I would turn it back to you, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing these insights. And let's move on to the Q&A session. So the first question.
So does SRP collaborate and engage with private landowners and reservations on wildfire prevention efforts? Yeah, we do. We spend a lot of time with our neighboring partners. So we have facilities that do cross onto reservations. So we just recently were meeting with them specifically in a region about helping to improve the conditions for around our infrastructure so that we don't have fire impacts and lessen that potential, because they're right on the verge of being in an area that could be in a PSPS, and of course they don't want to be into that position. So we work with them. We also share with them the output of the SmokeD system if it's in a region for their particular reservation, because some of these Bureau of Indian Affairs fire responders, they use the same dispatch center. So the dispatch centers are getting the information from SmokeD the same time we are. So it becomes available to any of those regions, as well as with private. We're meeting with private owners as we have infrastructure about making sure our corridors are clean and that minimus on fire potential. So we share that. We do share messaging about Firewise. The same thing we share about water conservation and things. So we spend a lot of time with public engagement in general, but we do also narrow it to fire and communications of that as well.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the next and final question.
Is there good communication during controlled burns to avoid false alarms? So yes, so you're talking for like prescribed burning and things of that nature. The SmokeD system will see that. We haven't gone down the path of trying to have it separate out or don't give me any more alarms, alerts on a particular event. I'm pretty sure that there is the way to do that, is if you have a known event and you say, okay, I'm aware of that one, don't alert on it anymore. We just, because it was new and we wanted the system to continue to learn, we never changed that requirement. But the idea about, we as a company are very familiar with where there's going to be prescribed burning or controlled burns. So we already have that awareness. That's part of what my job is. So if it shows up on SmokeD, we think that's good because it's alerting on it. And that was one of the reasons why we did not want to restrict its capabilities. Hopefully that answers the question.
Perfect. So there's no more questions. So thank you very much, Floyd, for taking the presentation today. Thank you all participants for participating in this webinar. And that would be it for today. So thank you very much once again, and have a nice day.
All right, thank you. Have a good one. Be safe.